Please welcome our speaker, Felix!
I'm Felix, and I'm a recovered, hopeless dope fiend. How many times I gotta say that? So, like I said, last weekend I was up in Phoenix and I spoke at a rehab, and there wasn't quite this many people, and I did not get nervous about that one bit, and I've told a couple people on the way in here, it's like, I can't believe how fucking nervous I am, and I'm not really sure why that is. I think part of the reason that is, because my mind wants to control my emotional nature, and I'm afraid of what's going to happen up here because I've been really emotional this fucking week. My life is just so fucking amazing, and hopefully I'm going to convey some of that to you. I'm going to do my best. And I feel nervous because there's people here that have become an important part of my life in a very short period of time. Phenomenal things have happened. There's people from where I live. There's people from meetings. There's people I've just met. This, from where I've come from in my past life, is just unfucking believable to me. And so, like I've heard a lot of people say before, they talk about how at an early age they knew right away that they didn't fit in, that this feeling of insecurity and inferiority, and I knew that as soon as I hit kindergarten right away. It was very self-evident to me that I knew that I didn't belong with those kids, and that started to set in, and it only ever got worse and worse and worse. And it was no doubt that by the time I was 11 years old, I was already doing whatever I could to try to block off my consciousness of how freaking uncomfortable that I was. And when I say dope fiend, I mean I'm freaking. I got drunk the first time, and it's like I didn't like the fact that I threw up all over the place, and so I didn't think I was going to go back to using alcohol. At age 12 and 13, we didn't have back then what we have today. So I started sniffing gas and lighter fluid and whatever I could get my hands on, and so by the time I became an adult, I was already partying every single frickin' day, and I already went to rehab once, okay? And from the age of 18 to 25, I'm going to try to just paint a broad stroke to try to qualify a little bit. Things were already pretty bad. From the age of 18 to 25, it's a typical dope fiend story. It got worse and worse and worse and worse, and more drugs, and more this, and more that, more, right? If less is more, imagine how much more would be, And I ran it into the freaking ground hard. I mean, that's all I get credit for. So by the time I hit 25, it was I lost count of how many times I was in jail. There's a couple short trips to prison, 5 times for drunk driving, 6 or 7 freaking rehabs. Divorced and kids and abandonment and blah blah blah. A mess, wreckage, right? Wreckage, and so out of out of an attempt to try to get my life on track and keep it that way, I thought, well, maybe Wisconsin is my problem. So in 1992, I came out here, and with the absolute resolution that this time I'm going to get my life on track and I'm going to keep it that way. I have to, right? Because I'm 2,100 miles away from anybody that can bail my ass out anymore. So I landed here, and I tried. In the first month, I set up a bright outlook for my future. I started working. I got a job. I saved money. I got a car. I got a driver's license. I registered for school. I did all the things I know I need to do to try to get my life on track and to keep it that way. Now, in 1 month, so all I got to do is follow through on it, right? I didn't know back then what I know now, that I started getting restless. There's this dissatisfaction that sets in. I'm in a big city. There's got to be some cool shit. And so I started looking around for whatever I could find. And what I found at that point in time was Van Buren in the middle of Phoenix at the height of the crack epidemic. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, I love this fellowship because I feel like I can get up here and I can talk about whatever drug and whatever my fucking experience is and whatever language I want to use to express that I'm free to do that. And So, I mean, crack was never really my thing, but I do whatever I get my hands on. What I found was the powder cocaine, and I started banging that shit at a half ounce a freaking day, and that's because that's what I do. That's what I fucking do. You know, day after day after day, day and night, up to 8 days and nights at a time, and that was a rough run for me. Cocaine, back in the day, was rough shit, and it left me in a condition where my hand shook for a year after that freaking run. You know. That was probably the most physical damage I ever did on any runs I ever went on. And of course, I landed myself in jail, and I spent a little while in jail, and I got out of jail, and I don't want to dive into the details of that experience, but suffice it to say, I had what I would term as a profound spiritual experience, and that was the morning of August 17th of 1993. And on the bottom page 50, they describe this power as a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowing into us, right? And the way that I've always described it ever since I've had that experience was that I was sitting in this room and I had some revelations happen to me, and I come to realize that everything I thought I knew about living life was of absolutely no fucking value whatsoever. I was beaten down. I was at this low point. For years after that, I thought, well, I just hit that bottom that I hear everybody else talking about. I did not understand, like I do today and in recent years in recovery, that was my first conscious experience of the power of God affecting me. And I was overwhelmed with a sense of well-being and peacefulness. And I came out of that experience, which lasted only moments, feeling like I didn't know how it was going to happen. I couldn't imagine it, but somehow or another I felt like I was going to be okay and things were going to start getting better for me. And that experience was powerful enough and life-changing enough that I managed to stay clean and sober for almost 17 years after that. I knew by that point that because of my exposure to people in rooms like this, that for a guy like me, that there's an answer in this. I knew that by that time. And so even though I went to treatment, and even though they were throwing theories at me and all the shit that they do, the clinical people, they mean well, but they don't get us like we get us. They don't have a solution. So I went to treatment for the 7th and last time, and I dug into this book, and I dug into this book hard. And I started trying to live this thing. And for the first couple of years, it went well. But I found myself at a point in time where, okay, now it's time to start facing life. And I do what we do. And I went out there and I started working. I started holding a job for the first time as an adult. 10 years as an adult, I never held a freaking job. I rarely ever worked. And I held a job, and I got promotions, and I got raises, and I did that kind of thing. And then I registered for school because I knew it was important to get a college degree. So I find myself going to school full-time and working full-time. And I come up with this idea that this is just too much, that I need to put my recovery to the side for a little while just till I get out of school and this burden lightens, you know? So the program talks about the main problem centers in the mind, right? And I didn't know the shit that I know today, that set in and it starts convincing me of certain things, and that's what it convinced me of at that point in time. And so I put it to the side and I let things fall by the wayside. I was on the right track. I was doing the meetings. I was starting barely to learn how to sponsor people, to implement this as a way of life. But it went by the wayside. And my plan was when I graduated school that then I would go and I would come back to this, right? But once I graduated from school, the funny thing is that plan that I had set out on never even dawned on me again, because after that, then it was more education, then it was starting a business, it was growing a company, it was making money, it was always the next thing, right? Finish raising my kids, buy a house, pay off the house, they talk about in here about the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if I only manage well. So, and I adapted that fucking delusion. I didn't know it was a delusion. That's the nature of delusion. I'm lying to myself, but I don't know I'm lying to myself. Didn't know all that back then. So as long as everything was going well, I assumed it's because I'm managing well. Well, that held out for as long as that held out. And at 15 years of being clean and sober, the shit started hitting the fan. I had stepped on toes. Life materially was good. I was making over $100,000 a year, and I owned 2 properties, and I had money in the bank, and I had 5 vehicles, and I had, my dream property, my dream car, and taking my dream vacations. On the outside, everything was everything anybody in the world would ever want for. I had an ideal life. But I had made bad choices along the way. I was in a bad relationship. I was spiritually it sucked. Bill, in his story, he talks about that we must maintain our spiritual condition through work and self-sacrifice for others, right? In order to be able to weather those certain trials and low spots that eventually come, and they come. I had this idea in my recovery that God just keep me clean and sober, and then I will be able to succeed at life enough that I will be able to have enough money and enough possessions and enough power to be able to deal with most of the problems. It'll eliminate most of the problems in my life, right? And it'll leave me with enough minimal amount of problems that those I can deal with on my own. Those aren't going to drag me down. Those aren't going to cause me huge problems. These were the attitudes that I adopted. So at 15 years, the shit started hitting the fan at that point. And I felt it. I knew it. I sensed it at a deep level. And so then I ran back to meetings. I ran back to the fellowship. Okay, let's go back to that and see what, I thought, one of the attitude problems I had was I thought that because I went through the steps the first time, that's what was keeping me sober. I didn't know what I know today. That this is a path, but this path leads to a solution. The solution is the power that around here we call God, and only God keeps me clean and sober. I spoke in a meeting earlier today that, God has pulled me out of the fire a second time. I relapsed at 17 years, and I ended up back in fucking prison, and God got me sober a second time, and He's made it very clear to me. He's whispered in my fucking ear, and He's told me very clearly that I've done this for you fucking twice, and I'm not going to fucking do it again. That's as clear as that. I'm not going to do it again. And for me, death don't fucking scare me. I tried to do that many times over. It don't scare me one bit. I would take death out even today. If God would let me die, I would take it out. That's a fucking easy way out. It really is. But He's proven to me that I am not going to take my last breath until He decides I'm going to take my last fucking breath. That's all there is to it. So if I don't want to follow by this, if I don't stick to this closely, if I don't stay clean and sober, death is not an option. I'm going to end up going back to the horrors, to the misery that I lived in. We talk about a hopeless condition of mind and body, right? But there's a subjective way of describing that hopelessness other than just the hopeless state of mind and body that you learn about in the program. If you read this and learn this and study this, and I highly suggest that you do that if you're like me. To me, the hopeless condition is living every single fucking day either in a bathroom or a bedroom or a car with a bottle of Jack Daniels or a bag full of whatever or a spoonful of whatever, day after a single fucking day. And knowing in the pit of my stomach that sooner or later I'm going to end up back in fucking prison, and wishing, even though I know that it's not going to happen, wishing that I end up dead before that happens again. And living like that for fucking months on end. And it's like watching myself do it, because I understood powerlessness a long, long time ago, and there's nothing I can do to not do that. Even today in my life sometimes, right? In the book, they talk about the most important fact of our lives today, and yeah, I do some quoting, and that's what I do. I like it or lump it sometimes. The most important, because I agree with it, because it's my freaking experience, and then people help me put it into words. The most important fact of my life today is the consciousness of the presence of the power that we call God, right? And I know in the center of my being when that is becoming dim. Because when that starts getting obscured is the word they use for it. When that starts getting dim for me, I know, because I start getting suicidal thinking. Because that is the only thing that I have never tried and completed as an alternative to not relying upon God to stay clean and sober and the program that's in this freaking book. So when that starts happening to me, because, that's the kind of person that I am. I want to come here and I want to speak truth. I don't want anybody in here to go fucking die. It's probably a likelihood that some people here are going to, or are going to relapse or end up back in prison. And if there's anything I can say, if there's anything I can do to help somebody not do that, you know, and I believe that speaking the truth is an important part of that. And, you know, suicidal thinking sets in from time to time. And to me, it's just a red flag. It's a red flag that, okay, I need to work harder at my spiritual condition. And working harder at my spiritual condition was somebody, what I had to learn the hardest way possible is, like, if somebody asked me what I'm doing to stay clean and sober, I'm not doing nothing. God's doing it for me, you know. But I have to participate in something here. And so in the beginning of chapter 7, working with others, on page 89, it starts out by saying, practical experience shows that nothing so much ensures immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics, that it works when other activities fail, which infers the fact that sooner or later all other activities will fail. And when I relapsed at almost 17 years, I went to a meeting that day. We prayed in, we prayed out. I went and spent time with people in AA that day. And on the way driving home, the switch went on in my head. The insanity returned. That's what they talk about. The insanity returns. And it was like click. And I just knew I was going to go get fucked up. And it consumed my mind. This state of mind they talk about, the obsession. My mind was consumed with the idea of how I was going to feel to be high again. And that was the only thing I was capable of having in my head. And the only other thing in retrospect that I can remember going on the back of my head was the idea of, well, it'll just be for a little while. You know, it wasn't, well, I'm just going to do 1 or 2. Oh, fuck no. I know I don't do that. I go all the fucking way out. I'm going to do as much as I can until I'm laying on the fucking ground. But my mind told me, yeah, but I'm just going to do this for a little while. Some days, weeks, whatever. And then I'm going to go back to meetings and I'm going to get sober again. You know, I already known at that point that once I start, I cannot stop. It takes 6 to 7 years for me to run it into the ground. Both times now, that has been my experience, is living fucking hell. So, how important that is. It says alcoholics on that page, which means plural. To me, I take it very literally. I'm a pretty fucking literal person. That means 2, minimum of 2. I have to be intensely working with a minimum of 2 people at any given time. And if I'm not, I'm going back to the hunting grounds and I'm looking for more. I need more because that's my insurance. That's my immunity. If I'm not doing that, I'm walking around with spiritual AIDS. I'm vulnerable. I don't know what's going to happen. That, so far in my experience, has been the one thing that I know has worked for me. And sooner or later, one way or another, I know that everything else sooner or later has failed. That's their experience they recorded, and that is my personal experience as well. So, you know, on that note, so I'll finish up my background a little bit. So I relapsed, and it took 2.5 years for me to blow through. I had about $500,000 in net worth at that time. And so I had a lot of resources at my disposal. It took about 2.5 years to burn through all of my resources and then turn it into a one-man crime wave, pluck off everything that I can, and start racking up felonies, because once I start, I don't stop. And I do whatever the fuck it takes to get the next fix, and I don't give a shit. And the crimes just keep getting worse and worse and worse until I'm locked up. And being locked up don't stop me either. So I was arrested in the end of 2012, and the main thing I was arrested for at that point in time was what the cops called the drive-by shooting. And what I ended up convicted of was F2 dangerous, discharging a firearm in a residential structure. And 9 months later, when I went to court and I got sentenced to 12 years in prison, the only people that showed up to testify on my behalf was 3 people from my home group. That's what that they call it a fellowship of friendliness and understanding, which is indescribably wonderful. Those people couldn't save me. Nobody can save me from myself. But they were there. They tried. They did what they could. Those were the people that when I was sketched the fuck out, when I was chasing shadow people with a loaded gun, they showed up and they disarmed me and sat with me for hours till I could go to sleep. When I was drunk and suicidal, they showed up and gave me coffee till I was good enough to go to a meeting. And they came to court and they testified on my behalf. On my behalf, I should have. Thank you. I appreciate that. So for a while, you know, I kind of had a a bit of a hard-on, like, because I'm like the fellowship, they're so loving, thank you very much, and caring, but they watched me sink, and nobody approached me like the way the directions in the book say to approach somebody and try to aid them to help. But eventually, the God of my understanding came along, and he opened my mind to a more of the truth of the facts. And the truth of the facts is every step of the way, them people were there for me. I had a good home group back then. I did. I remember walking into that, and one of the founding mothers was there, and they never said welcome home. They didn't have to, because her and a couple of other people, they made me just feel that way, just the way that they were. That's the way that they were. And that particular woman stayed in touch with me through 11 years of incarceration. She took collect calls from me in county jail when I was fucking drunk in county jail. Because I did. The end of my career, it came to an end drinking in county jail on March 15th of 2017. That's how it came to an end, in drinking in county jail. Drinking and blackout, passing out, wet in the bed, waking up, very fucking humiliated in jail. It's lucky I didn't get fucking beat up. It was the only place I seen in my incarceration. I seen people get killed. 4th Avenue Jail in Phoenix ain't no fucking joke. So I did 11 years of incarceration, and halfway through that, God got me sober again, and no doubt for the last fucking time. I'm convinced of that. And so I just got out of prison just a little over 100 days ago, after 11 years of incarceration. And, that has nothing to do with my sobriety. My sobriety and my incarceration, they are what they are. I mean, I came out of prison with more support and more connections in the recovering community that I had ever had in the previous years, because a couple of offenses, that ain't shit for God to work through. That don't mean nothing. He's proven that to me. So at the last minute, I decided to come to Tucson. So I'll circle back around. We're talking about Phoenix, and yeah, I spent decades in Phoenix. 12 days from the gate, I decided to come to Tucson. I didn't know anybody here. I didn't know a soul here. But I had a lot of faith in this power that's got my back. I always feel very led, and I felt led to come here, and I didn't really know why, and some of that is still unfolding for me. I came here not knowing anybody to speak of, and I hit the ground running. I started going to a lot of meetings, a lot of freaking meetings, and not because meetings keep me fucking sober. I went to meetings because for other reasons, to find what he would have me doing, to find newcomers, to fellowship with people, to follow where I needed to be, and it's not very far into that. This is going to be hard. Not very far into that, there came a time where, my background has always been AA and NA. I'm not a big fan of NA. Just an honest opinion. It's got to be about this, right? And so I've never really had exposure to other fellowships outside of that, and I had an opportunity, and I started looking around and feeling around, and CA has got some regular meetings throughout the week, and there came a point in time when I decided that, I want to check out what CA's got going on. So for almost 2 weeks, I went to every single fucking meeting that I could get to that they had on the schedule, because I try to not practice contempt prior to investigation. I need to conduct a thorough fucking investigation in order to make a valid opinion. And that's what this program has taught me to do, and that's what I did with CA. So when the first meeting I showed up at was a Sunday night meeting. And I didn't know it at the time, because you know what? We're spiritual beings having a human experience, and the spiritual world works in real fucking time. And sometimes I get glimpses into what has happened, and my human recognition, my human realization of what is going on and what has gone on spiritually lags behind. And so I didn't know that this was happening at the time. The first meeting that I showed up, those two people right there were there. Okay, and that's the next woman that got put in my life. It didn't have to say welcome home, because it just felt that way, and I did not realize what was going on, because it takes a while to unfold. And after that meeting, I chopped it up with those guys, and Derek gave me a ride home, And then there's another guy that was instrumental in what happened in those series of circumstances, and he's back out there, bless his heart, and I pray for him every day that he makes it back to us alive. And I send him text messages, and I don't hear nothing back from him, but I do it anyway, because my very life depends upon my constant thought of others and how I may help meet their needs. That's my fucking survival. That's what I have to do. And miraculous shit happens. Okay, and then and so they got my attention, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I felt compelled to keep going back to that meeting for a while. And Denise must be living that way too, because then she's like, "Hey, there's a committee meeting going on. She's doing the same thing that I'm doing for this other guy, right?" And I'm like, "Okay, I got to go." And then I met this woman over here, and these people, they drew me in. They drew me in, and there came a point in time here just some weeks ago where then I realized it all come together. I'm like, son of a bitch, I found it again. And it's not because my name's on the piece of paper. It's not because who's home group members, because I raised my hand. It's because it's the fellowship of the Spirit. And there comes a point in time when I just know it's something that's beyond what I can fucking think about, what my mind can get its mind around. It's the fellowship of the fucking Spirit. And since then, I'm like, I found my home. I found my home. Cocaine Anonymous is, we're not drug specific. And I've had people that have set the bar for me that have come up here, sometimes on Friday nights, or I've listened to CA speakers, and it's like, I know, and I feel like I can get in front of people in CA, and I can say any fucking thing I want, any way I want. And I'm going to be loved, and I'm going to be accepted. And that freaking says a lot, I've always been an AA guy. Them people kind of raised me. It's about the book. But when I got to this town, I went to a lot of AA meetings, and there's just a lot of attitude around there, I love AA. I love the history of AA. I do things pioneer style. The way that my main mentor, he gave me permission when he said, listen to the drunks in the book, not the drunks in the room. The program is in the book. They have the same name, but the program is in the fucking book, and the fellowship is in the rooms. And these people were divinely inspired, and they knew what they were talking about, and they had to put it in writing. They knew they had something, right? So in the foreword, the first thing they did when this book was first published in 1939, the very first thing you open it to is the foreword, now known as the foreword to the first edition. When you open up, the very first thing you read in there is the fact that they describe the people that were in the fellowship. They separate the people in the rooms and the program in the book, and they say, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Okay, that's people in the rooms. To show other alcoholics precisely how we've recovered is the main purpose of this book. The program is in the book. And they meant to emphasize the fact that the program is the more important part, because precisely how we have recovered is the only thing in italics in that entire foreword. They knew what they were talking about. And it's all right there. And I wished years ago somebody would have made that shit clear to me. Okay? Working with others, I'm scared to come up here because of how emotional I might get, because my life today is just it's unbelievable. It's phenomenal. I went 10 years in the past being clean and sober, and I made maybe one new friend and maybe one new business acquaintance in over 10 years of being sober, because I wasn't recovered. I was fucking sober, but I wasn't recovered, because these are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery, not a fucking program of abstinence. So, a little over 100 days out of prison in a brand new fucking town, and yesterday I crossed the threshold of having 150 fucking contacts in my phone. This life is blowing me away. Last night there was another one. There was more. There was like fucking 4 or 5 of them, right? Bang, bang, bang. And it blows me away for a guy like me that lived just avoiding people. I'd cross the fucking street to avoid having to talk to somebody because it was so uncomfortable to have to try to hold up a conversation to try to deal with that shit. And now this is another step up the rung of what he's doing for me that I could never do for my fucking self. I'm in front of how many people, and a mixed bag of people. And so it just gets more fucking amazing every single freaking week. And the only thing that, you talk about a regret or the only thing that I wish for that I don't have in my life right now is why in the fuck did it take so long? 50 fucking years of misery and loneliness and being in a mental and emotional prison in my fucking head. And all you gotta do is, these are the steps we took, just suggestions of program of recovery. So, in between what I had going on today and tonight, I gotta touch on this because of that paragraph. This is important shit. I ended up in kind of a rush. I didn't get like some rest that I had to, because I have a sponsee. I have a few sponsees. Fucking two of them were in detox. One of them got a detox. He needed to go to the fucking CRC. And I'm like, okay, I go there and I give him a ride. I take him to CRC. That's what I did this afternoon, And I'm having a freaking ball doing this shit. 3 days ago or so, he's like, he gets kicked out of the rescue mission. He calls me up and he's like, and I know what's going on. I'm like, where are you? Okay, you want me to come get you? Yeah, I'll come get you. Okay, so I go and I pick him up and I pull up to the curb and it struck me all at fucking once. Just seeing him in the condition he was in, he sat in my car and I just started fucking laughing my ass off. I couldn't help it. I'm like, I couldn't stop. I was just busting a gut. I'm like, I am so grateful right now that I do not look and feel like you do right fucking now. 2 days of fucking crack the fuck out. And you just see it oozing out of his pores, right? And I was like, he took it well. And by the time I dropped him off at CVI, I had to pull the book out. I do that, and it talks about that in the chapter 2 wives at the end of it, that, hey, if he relapses, he needs to double up on his spiritual activities. Don't give him a hard time about it. He knows about it. The suggestion is try to cheer him up and ask him how I can be still more helpful. And so, he's leading me to do this experience, and then this experience, that comes back to me out of the book, and I just had to open the motherfucker up. And he wasn't receptive to the book at that point, but I'm like, okay, well, it's not for you, it's for me, because I know it's in there somewhere, and I just want to look it up to explain to me the experience I'm having right now, right? It was a hoot, because he's sitting in this seat, and I'm toting him around, and I go to this restaurant, and I'm like, the week before, I had a drunk guy sitting in that same fucking seat. And so I had to take him to the park and feed him vodka to get him into the fucking VA hospital. He did 4 detoxes in 1 week, and I toted him to 3 of them. And, a lot of people would think, that's some really grueling, sucky fucking work. I'm having a ball. I'm sorry, I'm having a ball. These people, I'm looking at the condition that they're in, and God has put them in front of me to try to help them. And it helps me more than helps them. And so I had another revelation in this last experience with this guy, because I'm seeing as myself at some point in the past, and I'm seeing like it's deja vu. It's deja vu, some of the things I'm watching and I'm hearing and I'm smelling and the whole 9 yards. And so I just feel so much like they're me sitting there. And I'll end with this, because in 3 pages into A Vision for You, it talks about you will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself. And so I'm sitting there looking at these guys, and I'm seeing my fucking self, and I'm treating them with love, and I'm treating them with tolerance, and that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting out of that experience. Exactly what it talks about. The love that we have in here, because the solution is a three-pronged solution. In the 3rd step directions, it says that I have to give credit to His power, His love, and His way of life. And His power is found deep within me. His way of life is found in this book called Alcoholics Anonymous in the first 164 pages. And His love is found in the fellowship of the Spirit, which is in these rooms. I get no credit for nothing. And I thank you for sharing in my experience. My name is Felix, and I am a recovered helpless dope fiend.